This episode of the OnlyKings podcast is brought to you by OrganicPricedBooks.com. Guys, there hasn't been a better time to start comic collecting, let alone get into the omnibus game. They have a wide and growing selection of books shipping now, as well as highly anticipated pre-orders, such as The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5 Omnibus, priced at $125, discounted to $80. Enter my promo code KING at checkout for an extra discount. Again, enter promo code KING for an extra discount on top of the 36 to 40% they are already offering. OrganicPricedBooks.com, promo code KING. Now back to the show. Robbie Harrison.
Hey, what's up, man?
Good to fucking see you, man. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Aside from running into each other at the gym like 2 months ago, when's the last time we saw each other? It was definitely at NIMI.
Oh, yeah, New Mexico Military Institute. I think 2013 is when I graduated.
That's fucking crazy. So,
about
8 years?
Dude, insane. And a lot changes in 8 years, you know, as you grow older.
Yeah, a lot's changed. So you went to NIMI and you got your associates in
Science.
And where did you go from there?
So afterwards, I debated to go into a public institution or another military academy. And I decided on Norwich University because New Mexico, you know, Military Institute built that foundation.
Right.
That lying foundation that taught both me and you adulthood at a very young age.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand what you go through at military school. Like, remember when they took away our phones for like, what, 3 to 4 months around there?
No, it was for 3. They took away our phones. Well, for me, they took it away for 3 weeks. The first
really?
21 days.
Oh, I thought they took away mine for a lot longer. Was it because I was in college?
Maybe. I don't remember. Man, that's been so long. Yeah, I want to say they took mine away for the first 21 days, and then or maybe it was longer than that.
No, because we had rat training. It was longer than that. Rat training for us was...
It was a lot. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was a couple months. I don't remember. That's crazy.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, you had to grow up real quick going there. To succeed anyway, you got to grow up quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just... You know, Roswell, New Mexico, middle of nowhere, alien town.
Yeah.
Well, we had to put in a 2-week before we got leave to go off campus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
otherwise, we were stuck in the box.
Yeah, with nothing to do.
Oh my God!
So you go into Norwich, and where did you study there?
Yeah, I entered the nursing school.
Cool.
And I graduated within 4 years, and got my bachelor's in nursing, and then I did my residency of nursing to get my certification at Dartmouth Hospital.
Holy shit.
So, and now I'm entering University of Pennsylvania for the primary pediatric nurse practitioner program.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's awesome.
I know, man. Trying to save lives.
That's so awesome. So then the reason that you found yourself in Albuquerque was because you're a travel nurse currently.
Yes, I've been a travel nurse before the pandemic, actually.
Okay, so when did you start doing that?
I started travel nursing after a year of my first nursing career. And after I completed the residency at Dartmouth, I went to Tampa Bay General, worked on their NICU, and then I entered travel nursing about January.
So you worked where, the NICU?
Yeah,
what was that?
Neonate ICU. So I take care of like premature babies.
Okay.
From whenever they are born, especially if they're early, to term, which is about 38 weeks. And sometimes they can stay longer than that, depending on their underlying conditions as well. But I'm mostly pediatrics.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So,
and that was down in Florida?
Yeah, that was down in Florida. And after that, I just decided travel nursing was more my fit for my lifestyle. And I went to my first travel assignment in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where the military base is.
Yeah.
So
I think that's Bragg down there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bragg's down there. Well, that's awesome. So when you begin travel nursing, how far away is that from when COVID kicks off, end of 2019, beginning of 2020?
Actually, my first travel assignment, I started in January 2020 before COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
And that was interesting because we transitioned into COVID cares.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, before it hit media news, we didn't think how much effect it would have.
Yeah.
But in reality hit, travel nurses at my hospital became the main COVID nurses because nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew it was as infectious as what they thought, and nobody knew the death rate. and no one knew about the effects that you had of getting COVID.
Right.
And because of that, the unknown is what people fear. People like their own space where they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But once you reach out of that space and you do the unknown, that's when it gets scary. So a lot of people wanted to be away from COVID, but I volunteered at the hospital to take care of the COVID patients because no one else wanted to.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. And that was a real scary time. Like, because like you said, it was the fear of the unknown. Nobody knew what was going on.
Oh.
And I mean, when it first kicked off, I remember reading sites saying, well, we might have like a 5% death rate. We might have a 10% death rate. This might be just kicking off all the old people. Like, this might, if you have horrible lungs, if you're a prior smoker, you're done, right? You get COVID, you're done. And then we saw all the just horror stories out of New York where they didn't get enough ventilators and masks and PPE.
Absolutely.
And just, that was a scary time. So, and one point that you brought up before we started shooting, the U.S. has had a lot higher rates and cases of COVID when compared to other places in the world, and there's multiple reasons for that, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in your opinion, what are the top like reasons for that happening?
Absolutely. When, before anyone knew COVID, right? International traveling was still happening from November to when we actually saw COVID coming into the hospitals to March. So you had a brief 4 to 5 months of international traveling coming in and out. And U.S., as we all know, is one of the biggest tourist spots in the world. Why?
Yeah, on the globe.
New York City,
Yeah.
Miami, San Diego, Los Angeles. I mean, when you think of America, you just think of those places to go to. And those are constantly coming in and out. And what people don't understand is that people fly on planes from other countries, right?
Right.
So once they land, you can spread viruses. No one was wearing masks. And when people sneeze, what happens? You can get sick that way from contact, from anything. And because we didn't know what COVID was, we didn't know how infectious it was, COVID was just spreading left and right. And once we got testing down, we knew who had COVID, but it took a while to get COVID tests, the production of it at a high rate so we can test at a high rate. And so in reality, COVID was probably in America and in parts of these worlds for a long period of time before we found out how many people had it.
No, for sure. And it's interesting you bring that up because I know multiple people who like in September, October, November, December of 2019, they got really sick and just they were like, well, I don't know what this is. They go to the doctor. Doctors don't know what this is. They try to treat it for the flu. They try to treat it for a form of strep throat, but they don't really know what it is. And they're just deadly sick for 2 weeks. And then they got over it and moved on. And then COVID kicked off. And it's like, oh, maybe I had COVID before it was even like in the media.
Exactly. A lot of people, when I was in North Carolina for my first travel assignment, there were a lot of, when I was in pediatrics there was a lot of kids that were getting tested for viral symptoms that came back with no positive flu A or B, no positive of any type of virus, such as any type of virus or any type of symptoms such as bronchitis. And all these negative tests kept coming back, so we were questioning what's going on. Why are these kids getting so sick? And we just thought that it was just something viral, which it was. It was a virus that was unknown, though, COVID-19. Right. And that is a possibility, but because we never had that accurate testing done, we couldn't have the accurate 100% sure that was COVID or not.
Right.
But in my experience, because I was a nurse since 2018, that was the hardest respiratory season of what we call when flu A, flu B hit, and so on of any type of respiratory illness that I've ever seen. Like, we were constantly busy, admissions and discharges, and our hospital was constantly full. So it was a definitely hard season. But once COVID testing happened in March, we started to realize, oh, that's a possibility. It could be COVID-19.
Right.
But, you're still unsure because it's never 100% certainty because we never tested that early.
Okay. No, I mean, that's Yeah, I couldn't even imagine what that was like for you guys. 'Cause I remember, like I said, seeing stuff out of New York where they're trying to expand the hospitals. They're using a bunch of new spaces they never even had for COVID
Hmm.
because of your massive influx of patients. Did you see that happening when you were in North Carolina, having to repurpose certain areas of the hospital or repurpose new buildings in general just
Yeah,
for COVID? Like, what was that experience like?
absolutely. During the transition of COVID was pretty rocky for many, many hospitals. And especially when people were questioning whether they should risk themselves, caring for them. And these are healthcare providers who have determined their life to helping the sick, right?
Right.
But, like I said, the unknown is scary. And I was only one of the few nurses that volunteered to take COVID cases. And I was getting COVID cases when we realized what it was.
Yeah.
And during that time, all these PPE gear, protective gear, is what we used. We just didn't have enough because we didn't have mass production at that time.
Right.
So the issue is that people were using trash bags. You saw that in New York City, right?
The trash bags, Halloween masks.
I mean, New York City's population is just insane.
Yeah.
There's just not enough hospitals to take care, probably not even more than, I would say, 20 to 30% of the population. So if you have that number coming up to that number getting sick, you're going to have so many casualties, unfortunately.
And that's on top of your traditional people that come in anyway, whether it's car accidents, GSWs, fall patients, people that get like stuff like bronchitis, cancer patients. You have all these other things on top of COVID. So I couldn't even imagine what that was like.
Oh man, that hospital's busy now, but that was the busiest season and probably the most stressful season I've ever had of nursing, right?
Yeah.
Because think about it. Doctors do go into the patient's room, but nurses go in there a lot more because we care for that patient, at a very more so, I would say, more frequent time.
Okay.
Because doctors take care of multiple patients, so they have to see multiple patients. But we go in that room, more than anyone else. Just as much as our respiratory therapists too.
Okay.
And it just gets frustrating because when you're trying to do everything that you can, the unknown, we don't have any evidence-based practice to know what we need to do first. But that's gotten better over the year. We've gotten a lot more evidence-based practice, so we're treating it a lot better. That's why the death rate has gone down, is because we know what to do now. And it's just interesting how we're transitioning because we've never seen a epidemic this strong before. Another instance was when we had these admissions of COVID coming down. You would hear nurses getting arguments with the head physician because sometimes the physician has to approve of your protective gear because we were so limited on protective gear. We needed a reason to get the protective gear. They kept it locked up, down in the storage room because we didn't want to run out of protective. It's understandable because we don't want to run out of protective gear because the whole country was in a point where we hardly had anything left to protect ourselves as nurses or as any type of healthcare provider. So there was times where I had to step forward and cross that line to make sure I was keeping not only my patient safe, but my staff members safe. Because once you go in that room, you don't want to bring any type of viral illness that they have to your staff. Some staff people, have the right. Every staff person has the right for safety, and you don't want to risk anyone else, especially people who have asthma or any type of respiratory illnesses or have diabetes or have hypertension that put themselves at a higher risk than the average person. And we need to protect not only just our patients, but we need to protect all healthcare workers because we need healthcare workers. We are at a shortage of healthcare workers. And that's one of the reasons too why when it hit us so hard, you saw all these viral videos of nurses or any physicians or any type of healthcare provider so stressed out because they were overbearing them with patients.
Right.
And the safety for everyone was declining. So
yeah, no, I remember watching all that crap, just being like horrified. Like I couldn't imagine being in your guys' shoes, and
Like, so thinking about all of that now and taking all that into consideration, now we're entering April of 2021, a little over a year after all of this kicked off.
Yeah.
What do you think are like the major improvements that were really like crucial, like they were the game changers over the past year to make sure that we're on the right track to taking care of this?
Yeah. What I've been seeing lately is evidence-based practices coming out, and we are now, putting oxygen right away, helping the body, not only, protecting the respiratory system, but if you increase the oxygen for the person that needs it, because when you have COVID, sometimes when you go through that, you will develop mucus within your lungs and things like that, or around your throat, or even around your ears, that will decrease the amount of oxygen going into you. But you need oxygen because your body thrives on that to protect itself. Your immune system thrives on oxygen.
Correct. Yeah.
Thrives on blood circulation. And we've seen that if you administer oxygen like right at an early rate, right when that emission start, they do a lot better than waiting later, like waiting even a day later or 2 days later. So it's all about early, I would say early healthcare as soon as possible. As soon as you find out that COVID-19 is your diagnosis, and depending on how COVID-19 affects you, because you can have mild symptoms or you can have major symptoms, and that's the two difference. And as we continue to develop more evidence-based practice for the patient population to help them thrive, to keep them safe and keep them healthy, and to help them overcome this illness, is what has to take time. So oxygen, I would say supplemental oxygen is huge, as well as testing on any type of underlying conditions that may develop after COVID, such as pneumonia, knowing what bacteria is affecting you, if our antibiotics can be prescribed for that certain type of bacteria.
Okay. And so that's actually you bring up the pneumonia. So in seeing COVID and being able to treat it as quickly as you can, now that we know that, like you just said, using the oxygen, using the other evidence-based practices, what are the major side effects that you're seeing from COVID patients, aside from the pneumonia that's been developing?
Absolutely. I'm not any type of physician at all. Let's get that straight. And shout out to the physicians out there and all the healthcare providers, because we're all a team, and we all, it takes a team to care for a patient. It doesn't take one individual.
Right.
So more than anything else of what I've seen from my experience, sometimes you can get COVID for a second time, and sometimes you might have to be readmitted for that, but that's a very low chance because your body develops a strong immune system to go against whatever you have been exposed to at times. And the thing is that sometimes what happens is if you develop these respiratory issues, it takes a lot longer to heal from that. Sometimes you'll see patients still struggling even after their discharge with breathing problems, because COVID has developed an underlying pneumonia condition that has scarred their respiratory tissue. And it takes a while for that to come back stronger than ever. And because we've never experienced COVID-19 before, our bodies, each individual body is affected a lot differently. Sometimes you'll see similar cases, but that's why you see such problems such as minor conditions versus major conditions that could lead to worse situations. And I just think that as we continue through evidence-based practice, that we'll create more safer routines, as well as better medications, and even have better cares to decrease the total death rate of COVID-19, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so speaking on medications, things that you can take, there's been, what I've heard over the past, maybe 8 months or so, a lot of talk about vitamin D and zinc being able to help be a preventative measure.
Absolutely.
And then as well as if you can catch COVID early enough, if you give the patient hydrochloroquine, that was helping. So what role did you ever have any role with hydrochloroquine, any use with that, or any knowledge about how that went down? If that was actually an effective practice, or something that's got perpetuated to give people hope?
That is a question that I can't answer, because It's more so of the physicians knowing the type of medications that can be used for those kind of patient populations, because there is a difference between pediatric care and versus adult care. Because in pediatrics, they have a lot less death rate, and I've seen it because I've worked in the adult ICU as a resource nurse. I did that in Oklahoma, so I was helping out adult nurses with tasks that they couldn't do because they were so busy. So I was doing their nursing tasks, which, I felt honored to doing because they were so busy and they needed to do other things to keep their patient alive versus the things that I needed to help them with. So if they couldn't hang meds, then I went to go hang meds. If they needed to turn a patient, I went to go help turn a patient. If they needed to let me increase the oxygen therapy on their patient and I was seeing a decrease while they're in another patient's room, I was doing that. So I was doing everything that a nurse was doing, except I was helping the whole unit. So a 30-bed unit out. So I would just go around and helping everyone as a second nurse for everyone else's patient cares.
And so because I've never been to Oklahoma. I've never really looked into what their practices are there as far as like the COVID restrictions. Where are they sitting right now as far as like when you were there? When it was like the capacity is a mask mandate, was that all of that still in effect?
Yeah, the hospitals were a lot of the time, especially on the adult side, was at max capacity.
Wow.
So the issue is that you have these patients getting delayed of cares because they can't get the health care that they need because why? The hospital's at max capacity. What a lot of the media doesn't cover is why are patients getting delayed cares? Because we're at max capacity. There's only so many hospitals.
Yeah.
They can't hold the whole population.
Right. They're not meant to.
They're not meant to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was one of the prime issues. Think about New York City. They had to bring a Navy ship in to care for these patients because they did not have enough patient bed cares for everyone getting COVID-19. And that is such a major issue that people do not realize. And that's why COVID-19 is very serious, is because if we get to a certain point where we can't control the virus, the death rate is just going to go up because no one's getting consistent cares. But the death rate's going down is because we're finding evidence-based practice on consistent cares of what we should be doing, such as early administration to the hospital when needed, especially, and getting them right on oxygen therapy, starting them on some type of antibiotics if they develop pneumonia or any type of illness that they need to cover with antibiotics.
Interesting.
So it's just, it's fascinating how we transition so fast to giving better cares. I mean, the world technology is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everyone should know that healthcare workers everywhere are giving, their best.
Yeah.
And I, I'm very passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
And I love what I do because I believe in what I do. And I feel as though what I do does make a difference in not just my community, but in the world. That's why I want to continue my education. But all these other healthcare workers deserve, as much of, I would say, deserve to know these kind of best evidence-based practice so we can give our patients that kind of care.
No, I totally agree. Like, you guys need, like, obviously, God bless all of you guys for what you do, and you guys need every tool that you can get to successfully complete this task because this is not, like, it's quite frightening, honestly, if you can break it down. And I'm just thankful we have guys like you and women.
Don't worry about it.
All you guys that are able to do stuff like this. And so, like, being able to give you guys the tools that you need, being able to give our governments, not only just the American government, but just the governments of the world, the information we need to be able to do all of that, you then get into the problem with some countries weren't correctly like reporting numbers, and there's rumors of like various countries doing like almost like data malpractice, I guess. Like they weren't like telling everyone what was going on with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you ever told about that or experiencing anything like that? Were you guys trying to get data for yourselves, or is it?
Yeah. So when COVID-19, transitioned at the first type, no one had any data what to do. So it was just kind of, you're just going in blind. And you're trying to see the physician's orders to see what best works for them. But at the same time, the whole country was uniting to find the most evidence-based practice. So that's what you were seeing in the first year to help, find what cares helped them the most to get over that illness. And it's just, I'm still mind blown to this day about how fast we're transitioning.
For sure.
Even getting a vaccine rolling out. I mean, data shows that it takes years to find a vaccine. You know what I mean? So we are just trying to do as best as we can to save as many people as we can.
Well, what do you think was able to be the major proponents of getting that vaccine out so quickly? Because I feel like there's two, being very general, but there's two kind of camps of people. There's the people that see the vaccine and they're like, that's awesome, we did it. Like, I can't believe everyone got together. There's a lot of hope to that. It's like, we have all these years of evidence that they were able to put together, and now that we have it. But then there's the other group of people where it's like, well, because it came out so fast, should we trust it? So I'm more on the positive side of things. What were the major proponents, in your opinion, that fueled the vaccine being completed in under a year?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a team effort because a vaccine goes through phases before administering to the public, as everyone knows, and you have to pass those phases. So it took, not only the government, but the citizens, the hospitals, everyone who meant or had benefited or even has helped the project. So it's like a team effort. There's no single person.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's plenty of people in a lab researching about COVID every single time. And still to this day there are, right? So as we continue, they're just going to try to find the most evidence-based practice to help develop the most perfect vaccine.
Right. And so now we've got the Johnson & Johnson single shot vaccines coming out here pretty soon. Me personally, I got the 2-shot Moderna vaccine. And, it put me down for the count for that second dose. That second dose put me down.
Absolutely. But your body's reacting to it, and it's a new virus.
And so that's what I was going to ask you. Is it a dead virus like a traditional vaccine, or is it an RNA vaccine?
Yeah. I don't know the full details of that vaccine because it's not my expertise of that work. I wish I could tell you that, but that's why we all have different jobs.
Yeah, I know. No, you're cool.
So you know what I mean? And there's plenty of, you can always go online and to research what kind of vaccine that you're getting. And what's most interesting is that we're transitioning now, as you saw on travel nurse assignments, there's a lot less, there's still more there's still a lot of jobs, I would say, hospitals are asking for travel nurses like myself to go into to care for those patients. But now they're opening up COVID clinics to get the vaccine rolling out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to administer, as many vaccines as we can to provide an immunity herd.
Right.
So that the world can,
move on
and improve. And I would say open up the economy because when COVID hit, there was a lot of people that lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because of that, they even lost healthcare because they can't afford the healthcare insurance.
Yeah. So
it was a lot. The media doesn't cover that part of how there's other effects of COVID, not just patients passing away, which is just as sad, even sadder, right? But there's also other effects that it has had to major people who required that income to provide for their family.
No, and I agree with you. That is a huge thing that bothered me over the course of the past years. And stuff like that wasn't getting reported. How I think in New Mexico specifically, 1 in 4 small businesses went under. Suicide rates jumped up by 25 to 30% on average. Yeah. Domestic abuse and violence went up like crazy, and so now, it's just insane to me. You're telling businesses, hey. And I get where it's coming from. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, especially when it first kicked off. You got to operate at the 25% capacity, 30% capacity, depending on where you're at. But they still have to pay 100% of their bills, and it's just very sad to see the local businesses go under. One argument that I kind of see people give out, and I just want to get your quick opinion on this. Yeah. A lot of people say you shouldn't, because I think COVID is a very serious thing. Like, I agree with you. It is something that is to be taken seriously and something we need to, like, move ourselves forward in the right direction of being vaccinated and maintaining the proper CDC guidelines until we were finally out of this thing. But one of the most common arguments against it that I see is that it's just a variation of the flu. It's just a different version of the flu. It's not that bad. Like, and this is coming obviously, I would imagine, mostly from people who like had the very mild symptoms and moved on from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's your take on that? Because I'm sure you've heard that too. It's just a variation of the flu.
By variation of flu, the issue is that when people don't understand that term, it means that you can have flu-like symptoms. You know what I mean? Because it's not a replica of the flu, because they're two different things. That's why you have two different testings.
Right.
Right. So, and the thing is that there's always misconceptions that are always going on, false narratives, and that creates a lot of false thoughts in other people's head that can develop their own, opinion about things. So it's really unfortunate, because it's not, you can have flu-like symptoms. It's not a variation, I would say, of the flu, because COVID-19 is on a different level, I would say. You know what I mean? Even though that they're both in probably the same category or genre.
Because they're like coronaviruses.
They're just in the same genre because they're a virus, and they're in the same genre with the same types of symptoms. They're two different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just a
matter of ignorance almost.
Yeah, I guess it is. And when you're given false information, you develop this false opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. And speaking more on like the unexpected side effects of the pandemic, right? All of this going off is we're seeing a major resurgence now. We were talking about this a little bit earlier of Asian hate.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
We're seeing a lot of because that's how it started in the beginning. Amongst the ridiculousness of people thinking Corona beer caused coronavirus and people hoarding toilet paper and all this insanity going on, terms like the Wuhan flu, the China virus, a bunch of different like little catchphrases started floating around, and we saw a major surge in hate crimes against Asian individuals, Oriental individuals, and now we're seeing that resurgence again. What's been?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really sad about how the community or the Asian community is getting so much hate for ignorance that causes false opinions, which affected a whole community, and that's why false information out there is so dangerous. Mm-hmm. Because you have people who do not understand this kind of thing. And I'm Filipino, so I am Asian, and it's just such a false narrative that no one deserves to have. Unfortunately, statistics are showing that there are an increase of hate crimes, and it's so unfortunate because at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
Yeah.
America is a pothole of beautiful different types of races, beautiful different types of backgrounds, ethnicity. And, that's what makes, I think, America amazing, is because we have such diversity.
No, for sure.
And you cannot blame a virus for a race or anything, because it's just a virus. It was developed long before us, and there will be viruses long after us that we will have to create vaccines for. And that's what people don't understand, is because as time goes on, we're continuously being exposed to different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Viruses are continuously evolving, because we're creating herd immunity. And at that point, there will always be viruses after us. Look at the plague that happened, the plague, the flu that happened in, I believe, 1918?
1918, 1910, around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ebola. I mean, there's just so many dangerous things that people overlook because COVID-19 is a virus.
Now,
you can't blame a whole population because of a virus.
Did Ebola make its way majorly into America? Because I know it originated in West Africa, but it was a super deadly virus, right? So it killed most of the hosts that it took over.
There's different as you know, there's different variations of Ebola, but some of the most deadliest Ebola had like past 60% death rate.
Right.
And sometimes even past 70%.
Oh my God.
Yeah, is what, if I remember those correct statistics, don't quote me on that, but it's just, you have all these things and, like I said, you can't just blame a whole particular race for a virus that happened, even if it originated somewhere, but we will never know because science can never, concrete that. We just know where it was spread.
Right.
We can know where the first case is, right?
Yeah.
But we don't know how that virus got into that.
Right.
Got into the country or in that city or in that town, because we don't track it. We don't backtrack it to all the way then. It's just all theories.
Right.
It's so hard to prove.
Yeah, and so now, like, I had a train of thought. I think I actually wrote it down, actually. Just kidding. Yeah, so why do you think, like, or how, not why, but how do you think moving forward, individuals themselves, even when you are vaccinated, how can they continue to protect themselves from the virus, protect themselves from exposure? Is there anything you can really do outside of the mass social distancing, stuff like that? I mean, it kind of blew my mind. Not blew my mind, but like it kind of made me like go like what? When I saw the pandemic kicked off, and you see like television hosts like Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel teach people how to wash their hands again.
Yeah,
I didn't think we had to do that anymore.
Oh my goodness.
So aside from the obvious of washing your hands completely, disinfecting your surfaces, like just being hygienic.
Yeah, hygiene is so important, man. I don't know the statistics on it, but of how frequent people were hand washing, but obviously people weren't because the virus was just spreading so fast. And, this is unfortunate, but I always wash my hands after I use the restroom.
As you should.
Right, as we should. And how many times in the men's restroom did you see people not washing their hands?
Yeah, even before the pandemic.
Yeah, what I'm saying, before the pandemic, you know what I mean? And, after, during the pandemic, I'm seeing a lot more. And I'm seeing people carry hand sanitizer and things like that. And those hygienic things that we need to do are people weren't doing them before the pandemic. Like let's be honest.
Yeah.
And that just helped spread the virus.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do you? In your personal opinion, do you think there is a possibility, more of a likely possibility than not, of COVID kind of being like a consistent thing, like how every year we have a flu season, right? Where a lot of people get the flu, or like for me, literally between the ages of like 6 and 21, I got strep throat.
Yeah.
Every year in November, it just happened.
Yeah.
So do you think there will be like a COVID season once we get this kind of?
That's going to be hard to say because it depends on how effective the vaccine is, right? You know what I mean? There's just a lot of variables that are going to happen this year, especially this coming fall, where we're going to see these kind of cases popping up to determine of how effective this vaccine is going to work, and how effective our treatment cares are going to be moving forward. Because everything is based off evidence-based practice. But what the key, I would say the key thing what we need for evidence-based practice is what most people don't understand is time. You know what I mean? That's why you were seeing such changes in hospitals, because we were trying to get what was most evidence-based practice out there. And that just needs time and needs the population to be committed, the citizens to be committed to helping not just yourself, but the community and the world.
Yeah.
And we will see, like I said, in the future of how everything's going to come out, and you can never give an answer to that question because it's just the time is the variable.
Yeah, and for me, I think, in my opinion, like I'm hopeful because I think.
Hey, we need more positivity in this world.
Yeah, I think we've seen the worst of it. Yeah. Of like specifically COVID. Yeah. Like you said, there's always going to be another pandemic. There's always going to be another. Like it's going to happen eventually. Maybe not in our lifetime, but it'll happen.
It will continue, man.
And so I think in 2020 we really did see the worst of it.
Yeah.
And it's obviously super unfortunate that right in the middle of the pandemic that the George Floyd incident happened, and that even drove a bigger wedge into just into just how divisive this country is and how divided we are as a populace. But even if that altercation, if that incident had never even happened, the worst that we saw from the pandemic, the hospitals being over flooded, people running out of respirators, dying on respirators, people being locked in their homes months and months, everything that we've just covered, I really want to believe that it's not going to get that bad again.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I really want to believe that, and I think the way forward is going to be this vaccine. And it's tough because we were talking a little bit about the media, but it's tough because like you read, at least I've been reading more about like how there's another strain going on in like
in Europe,
and it made
how it came its way to America.
Yeah, and it came to like Colorado and stuff like that, and then.
And by the way, that's what you would call a definition of a different variation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You wouldn't compare flu and COVID-19. You can compare the symptoms.
Right.
But a different variation would be a different strand of COVID-19.
Yeah. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and then I know you don't work closely with vaccines, but like just in your opinion, do you think this vaccine would even be applicable to that variation? Do you think that's in the ballpark?
That's the question that's up in the air.
So that's just going to take time.
It's just going to take time because time is forever the variable for our evidence-based practice.
Yeah.
That's why you see healthcare continuously change. And it's not because we're not trying to do our best. It's because time is the variable. And I would say one of the most important things that we need from each other is patience.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, at some point in our lives, we've all lacked patience, right?
Yeah. And patience is running thin.
And exactly, patience is running thin.
It's running thin.
And unfortunately, it's just you can't bend the world to your whim. The world bends you.
Yeah.
And sees how resilient you are. You can break and fold under pressure, or you can continuously to rise to do better each and every single day. But not just for yourself, but for each other.
Yeah.
Because, the world isn't great without each other. And we need to start thinking more, not individually, but community-wise to the world, how we can do better for our families, how we can do better for each other that surrounds ourselves, such as our neighbor, how we can do better for the world, for third world countries that, that probably need this vaccine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can you imagine being born somewhere else where you're not given the healthcare that you need right away?
Honestly, no. That's a first world privilege.
Exactly. Yeah. There's always a quick access to healthcare here. It took some time, during the COVID pandemic because we were so max capacity.
Yeah.
But you will always find, healthcare workers here. Shout out to all the healthcare workers out there because they're doing amazing. That are willing to help you in your time of need at any moment you need it. Some third world countries do not have that access, and I think that's a privilege that a lot of people do not understand.
They lose sight of very easily.
And the media doesn't cover it. So we think differently because of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always fascinating how the media will cover something, but not cover everything.
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, the media is used to get news out there. So I just think it needs to be covered more of the whole story.
Right, rather than just cherry picking.
Exactly, because they will always go over the number of people dying due to COVID, and that's so sad, But they won't go over things that could cause COVID-19 being so major, like underlying conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we see pediatric population death rate as such a low, statistic? but the adult death rate is such a higher, is because as you grow older, you develop underlying conditions.
Yeah.
Especially hypertension, some, depending on what type of diabetes, like type 2 diabetes is developed.
Right, over time.
Over time.
Correct.
Respiratory issues, people smoking that already damage their respiratory tissue, right? So when you get COVID-19 and you get pneumonia, it's going to hit you a lot harder.
Right.
Than it's going to hit someone who doesn't have any type of damaged respiratory tissue, such as a pediatric patient, depending on their conditions too.
Right.
You'll have patients sometimes who are at risk because of asthma, but at the end of the day, the statistics are so much lower for pediatrics than they are for adults.
Right.
But the media doesn't cover the underlying conditions and what we need to do, not only, nutrition-wise, but we need to start doing things and thinking about doing activities that could build your immune system and create blood circulation around your body and help you get over viruses, such as working out.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I'm always a firm believer of doing things like working out and focusing on nutrition, because I feel as though our bodies will always be a reflection of our habits.
Yeah. Well, there's a great little...
But there's a gray area too for people who have conditions that, that prevents them from being as nutritious as possible or working out, such as like a high form of asthma, things like that.
Right. Well, there was a great little bit that Kevin Hart gave on Joe Rogan's podcast, I think a year ago or so. And it was a little over a year, it was before the pandemic. And it was when he started working out really hard. And people just were like, why? Like, why are you working out so hard all of a sudden? Are you training for something? He's like, no, I'm training for life. I'm
training for life.
Yeah, I'm training for life because life happens. I want to be fit and I don't want to be a slob anymore. And they're like, all right, well, do your thing. And then like 8 months later, he got in that horrific car crash that should have killed him.
Yeah, it shook him.
Yeah.
It shook him pretty good. And he was, I believe we saw videos of him, so badly hurt and so unfortunate that he couldn't even stand at some point.
Yeah, he couldn't for a while. But the doctors were like, yeah, if you weren't taking care of yourself like you have been, you probably would have died. And I think that's just like a perfect, like modern, if there's anything you want to look at in the past 20 years, that's it right there. Like, take care of yourself and it prepares you for life. And now that we have COVID, it seems like almost COVID was like the final exam for health. It's like, well, if you would have been taking care of yourself, again, there are gray areas, but if you hadn't been smoking, if you hadn't been shoving down McDonald's every other day, like there's a reason why the McDonald's drive-thru is packed to the brim, but it's so easy to skim through the vegetable aisle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you were taking care of yourself beforehand, if and when you got COVID, it would have been a lot easier on you. And it possibly could have saved your life from passing away from COVID. So I think that's a huge thing. Like, for me, like, if I had to choose, like, some of the top things that the media needs to be covering that they're not, it is nutrition.
Absolutely. And it's, what you see on TV is marketed by the most richest companies in the world.
Right.
McDonald's.
Coke.
Wendy's. Coke. Everything that... I've never seen a Trader Joe commercial. Straight facts. Right?
No, yeah.
I've never seen
a Sprouts or a World Market.
Sprouts or a Whole Foods Market. Yeah. I've never seen a commercial about how to cook nutritiously because no one cares about that.
Yeah.
The billion-dollar companies they only care about what puts in their pocket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, we can't deny this, but America relies on fast food.
Yeah. No, 100%.
I don't think you should get rid of fast food, right? Because that creates so many jobs in the world, in America. And
and some of it tastes good.
Yeah.
Like, have a burger every now and again, man, but not every day.
There needs to be, what the media doesn't cover is, and this is interesting and is one of the most important things that I want to do going into my field, is preventative healthcare.
Okay.
What do you mean by that? What I mean by that is preventative healthcare is treating the root of all things. You know what I mean? Is preventing them from going into a into a inpatient hospital admission from them going to that point. So we do things at a young age, which is my focus is pediatrics, right? Into establishing educational healthcare to parents about nutrition, diet, working out, being active.
Like, why all that's so important.
And even the mental illness in the adolescent or school age.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because social media is huge right now. The bullying is huge right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there needs to be a crackdown for those things as much as preventative. There needs to be more preventative healthcare.
No, 100%. And you hit the nail right on the head with pairing the social media or the mental illness problem with social media. I'm a huge believer in that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, these little rectangles here have absolutely, like, they're doing their job.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're just destroying our nation's reward system.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be instant. Everything has to be right now with bright colors, and it has to make me happy. Absolutely. And so when you're shoving that into kids' faces at such an early age, like, now it's almost like a parental anecdote that I hear so many times where it's like the kid's crying, the kid's upset, the kid wants something. You shove the iPad in their face and they shut up. Well, obviously, they don't know what the fuck that is. they have no idea what it is. They're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they realize that if they press the right things on the screen, it makes them happy.
Yeah.
So obviously it's going to occupy their time. But yeah, for anything from the instant gratification problem to specific things like young men and young women projecting their problems and like comparing themselves to these unrealistic standards that are put forward by various companies, whether it's like individual influencers themselves or people that are, to be honest, they're bought out by companies to portray a certain image, but they're not showing the other side of that, right? And how horrible it can be for their own mental health. I mean, the best example right now is Demi Lovato working for Disney just about broke her.
Yeah, absolutely. All the pressure that she was feeling, all the constant of hiding who she believed she was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the constant pressure from just like performing all the time, being in so many different places and just absolutely no time at all. I mean, when she's looking for de-stressors, like I think she said, I listened to her on a podcast recently, and she said that she was already doing blow at the age of 18, and she was already on opiates by that age as well. Yeah. And then now, most recently, with the last overdose she had like 3 heart attacks and a stroke, or that should have should have killed her. Right? That should have fucking killed her, but somehow she survived.
She survived. Yeah.
And yeah, she's on the podcast and she's talking to the individual, and she's like, yeah. So now I have brain damage, and my vision's all fucked up, and so like she'd be looking dead on, and like the teeth up, she can't really. It's like you stare at the sun for too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all like blurry and whatever. So, and I really do believe all of that stems from an unfair pressure put on a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just through a giant company. But then the image that she was putting out, who knows how many kids that affected, both positively and negatively.
Yeah.
And have you ever seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah, perfect
that thing is viral.
yeah. No, it's a great documentary to watch for people who haven't watched it. And there's a really good quote. I forget the girl who says it, but she was like, "You either check your phone in the morning before you pee or while you're peeing."
Yeah.
There's no difference for most people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, because we're so new to these things, we're just now barely getting into studies about how it's affecting people. But like 20, 30 years down the line, when we see these kids growing up, and that's what their habit in the morning is, they wake up and they just like play on their phone, and they do all these things where it's all artificial enjoyment, right? It's not something that humans are naturally made to consume.
Yeah, it creates our own happiness. And, social media is like a double-edged sword.
It is. No, it's a great thing. I mean, it makes stuff like this happen.
We can communicate. Like, I have family in the Philippines that I can communicate with, and I have friends across the world that I communicate with. But, the other line to it is how people are getting away for all the hate that they do. And it's so sad is because what our world does at times is thrive on hate, on on negative emotions.
What's easy to sell?
Because it's easy to sell. You know what I mean? It's easy. It's easy to form a negative opinion about someone than it is to form a positive, because people are going to remember your mistakes.
For
you
real.
know what I mean? But people won't remember the kindness that you give to them or to others, because you can do 100 good things. If you make one mistake, they're going to remember the mistake before they remember 100 good things.
No, 100%.
And that's the issue in the adolescent age, is that when you get into bad terms with a friend, but you were on good terms with him for a while, that one issue could cause a chain reaction of havoc, of bullying, harassment, and so on and so on and so on. And we need to campaign more anti-bullying, especially at the middle school and adolescent age.
I totally agree.
And we need to start it actually even younger. You know what I mean? I would say we should start it between preschool and elementary, because at the end of the day, it's better to teach someone that absorbs it like a sponge and create good habits when you're younger versus creating good habits later that are harder developed. You know what I mean?
No, and I totally agree. And you're right. It's so easy to develop negative connotations or negative perceptions on somebody. It's so easy to do that. And through social media, you're just communicating through a screen. I mean, people are so comfortable with that inherent protection that they feel that they have. And on top of that, in my opinion, like you look at like what's been going on again over the past year, it's with the division that's been happening in this country, it's so easy just for people to compartmentalize and put individuals or groups of people into a box. Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, just those crazy blank or those weird blank people that are all doing these things that I don't agree with, and I'm just going to label them as this. That's all they are. You're a Trump supporter. You're a liberal. You're a snowflake. You're, whatever it is. And it's just so easy for people to, again, feed off of that negativity because it makes them feel better. It's like, well, at least I'm not insert the blank.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. At the end of the day, I always believe what makes America beautiful is freedom of choice. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Freedom to think on your own terms. And because that thrives on creativity and things like that. And as we continue to have our own opinions, it's just we need to think about the hate that we develop in our minds, because at the end of the day, the world needs more kindness and more positivity.
Now more than ever.
You know what I mean? I mean, we went through a whole pandemic, and it's just sad to see all the hate that we develop to divide each other.
Yeah.
And I'm always one, like I said, you can always have your own opinion about anything, and that's what makes America beautiful. Mm-hmm. But we should always realize how we think and how we process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And unfortunately, it takes time to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think instilling good habits versus bad habits will be forever and effective on someone's life.
No, and I totally agree. Being able to, instill those principles and instill the idea that, like, play nice with others at a very bare minimum, play nice with others at a very young age, so that can eventually develop into, like, you can disagree with anyone you want, but that doesn't mean you gotta hate them for it. Mm-hmm. Are there hateable ideologies? For sure. And now are there hateful ideologies? 100%. Mm-hmm. But for the average individual, they're not going to believe that. Like, they're not going to be a very hateful or a spiteful or vengeful individual.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know. They're confused, or they're very firm in their beliefs. You're firm in yours, but you can still have a conversation. And I think that's such a beautiful thing about what, it's how mainstream podcasting has become. Because at the end of the day, it's just two people having a conversation. And one episode of one show could be two old friends having a conversation. Another one could be the host and an actor, actress, musician, author, right? Or it could be specifically to break it down to very simple terms, I guess, it could be a Trump supporter and a Biden supporter sitting down and having a conversation. But as long as we're still able to come together and have a a civil discussion, a civil discourse, I feel like perpetuating that is going to help us out a lot in the long term.
Absolutely. I think as we continue on, that we are going to learn from mistakes and continue to move forward. And
I hope so.
And not only better ourselves, but better each other, better your neighbor, better your friends, better your family, better the whole world. And as our race as humanity continues to develop, we develop on the right track and not the wrong track. Because it's so easy to get on the wrong track. It's so easy. It's so easy to make a bad choice.
Yeah.
Than to make a good choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so easy to make the choice that individually only helps you versus the choice that helps the whole community.
Right. No, for sure.
You know what I mean? It's so easy to be selfish, but it's so much harder to be selflessness.
No, that's a beautiful way to put it. I mean, it's that again. It's so easy to get into a
rhythm like that, right?
A bad rhythm
of bad habits.
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to do that.
Yeah.
So for you personally, I think this is a beautiful thing to close out on. For you personally in your job, as it hit super stressful part, like we talked about, just uber stressful. And now, I mean, it seems even though it's not as stressful, it's the stress continues. You're going to new places. What motivates you to keep doing this job? Yeah,
absolutely. The longest I'd gone without seeing my family, and there's plenty of people who have gone longer than me, you know what I mean, was 1 year when the pandemic hit. Because since I became into a COVID, I wouldn't say, but I was taking a lot of COVID cases. I was just scared of bringing it on the plane.
For sure.
To the home. I focused more on my job, and I stayed motivated because I was so... I didn't say, I put it in my head that every day when I woke up because I'm a night shift nurse, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not day shift.
Right.
So I sleep during the day.
Yeah.
And I put it in my head every day that God put me in this position to help and save others.
That's awesome.
And, everyone has their own different, I'm not here to put my religion, anything type like that. Everyone has a different, opinion. But I felt at that moment, when I volunteered to take these cases on, it was, I wouldn't say my duty, but God put me in that position to help others as much as I can. And, God still puts me in positions to help others to better my community and better the world. And that's why I'm so always motivated. This is my 5th travel assignment. And I'm always so motivated to go into work because I love work. I love taking care of the kids. I love meeting the families. I mean, you realize how unfortunate some kids have it, like domestic cases.
For sure.
Or kids who are develop underlying conditions at such an early age, such as cancer. I take care of all those patients. Or I even go into the NICU where unfortunately mothers go into preterm labor earlier and the child is born and they need ICU care right away. Immediately, otherwise they won't survive. I thrive off of staying motivated and determined to know every day that I'm going to make a difference. And it's so much harder staying in that rhythm, you know what I mean? Because you have to stay in that rhythm every single day.
Yeah.
And I just remember the position I'm in, the education I have, and the abilities that I believe I have to, I would say, save a life. And, I'm not the only healthcare worker that thinks like that. There's so many healthcare workers that think like that. And shout out to all of them. And I know they believe, and I know we're all trying our best at the end of the day. And that's why I want to continue my education and be a nurse practitioner, is because I truly believe in my ability to not only affect my community, but affect the world, because I'll be studying global health.
Yeah.
And global health studies in the pediatric population will mean I will be able to hopefully one day go to other countries and give healthcare to children that don't have access to healthcare as we do here. And I think that's something beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is. To share with the world rather than just share with your community. And I believe in that concept because as we continue to develop, we need to start seeing each other not by nation, but by humans.
Yeah.
Humanity.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're all part of the same world. We're all part of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? we don't know who's out there. There's thousands, millions of planets, right?
Yeah.
And we need to focus on taking care of each other and creating positive thoughts and doing things that matter and living a fulfilling life to not for yourself, but for everyone else around you. Because your environment will always be the reflect. Who you surround yourself with, what you do is always the reflection of your habits.
Awesome, man.
So
we need more of it.
Yeah,
we need more of it.
We need more of it now than ever.
Yeah, and I think that's a very beautiful thing that you stay motivated with.
Yeah, I love what I do, man.
Yeah.
And it's I'm not some hero, I don't believe into, I just love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. You don't need to label anyone as a hero because they love it, and that's one thing. I that term healthcare heroes. I think it's great. It provides a lot of support for everyone else.
A lot of morale.
Yeah, a lot of morale. But I'm far from a hero. You know what I mean? I just love what I do and I'm passionate, and I'm lucky to found it at an early age.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you for what you do, man. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. So I really do.
Never too busy for friends, my man.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you guys for watching and listening. Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter, everyone.
Have a great Easter.
And I hope everyone's having a fulfilling, family time or friend time.
Yeah.
However they feel to help them create that positive mindset.
Yeah. All right. Thank you again, Robbie.
No, thank you,
Appreciate you.
Always.
See you guys later. Bye.
See ya.